Okay, Kathryn, are you there?
I am, yes. Hello, morning.
Morning. So thank you to all the students that have tuned in during their half-term week on a beautiful Wednesday morning. We're really lucky to have Kathryn with us today, who is going to do a CV masterclass for us. Just before we start, I thought it'd be really helpful if Kathryn just gave us a bit of a background on herself. So the A levels she took and the route she took to get to where she is now. I hope that's okay, Kathryn.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. That's fine.
Wonderful. So what A levels did you take in school?
So I chose to study history, geography, and business studies, as well as general studies. My choices were quite easy actually because I was never going to be a scientist. I was never going to be a mathematician, and I loved humanities. So history and geography were really easy and enjoyable choices for me. And I was the first year that merchants offered business studies to rather than sort of straightforward economics. And I'd always kind of known deep down that I wanted a career in a commercial environment, in industry, working for a firm that makes or builds or offers a service in something and made money. So to have the opportunity to study at A level and have initial exposure to business planning and strategy, etc., was really beneficial for me. I then moved on to Aston University, which is quite an unknown university. Well, it was in my time, actually. I hadn't heard of it. It was my geography teacher, Mrs. Hart, at the time, who told me about Aston. And I investigated, researched, and thought, this is the absolutely perfect university for me. It's mainly a business school and a technical subjects, optometry, pharmacy, some of the sciences and languages. But it was a brilliant experience and one opportunity that I had, which I would thoroughly recommend if anyone has the opportunity, is I did an industrial placement year where I took my third year out, and as part of my degree I worked for Mars, as in Mars bars, not the planet. And I worked in their HR team, and I had an absolutely brilliant, eye-opening experience of the working world. And it was a shock to the system, working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, following my 7 hours a week lectures or whatever I had the year before. And it really gave me an understanding of what I liked and what I didn't like as much. So I had the opportunity to go back in my final year, even tweak my modules in terms of what I wanted more exposure to and maybe what I wanted to drop. And then when I came out into the workplace, I'd already had this year of experience, which was a huge springboard for me and a huge benefit. I then actually worked in the health fitness industry for a couple of years, and then got my first job in recruitment, I think, in about 2005. I worked in a recruitment agency, a recruitment consultancy for 5 years, recruiting HR people, which was really interesting, working for lots of different clients in the finance, banking, professional services, media, market spaces. It involved selling, it was hard work, it involved having a revenue target against my head, and it involved talking to lots and lots of people, which I really, really enjoyed. And then I hit a point where I wanted to get more involved in one business, so moved to work in my industry, what you call in-house, and I worked for a media organisation, publishing and events business, in their recruitment team. And since then I've worked my way up the ladder and had my family, and I'm now global head of resourcing for a business called Informa, and we joke saying we're probably the biggest business you've never heard of, because unless you're in the industries that we service, you probably wouldn't have heard of us, because we're a business to business knowledge and networking business. But yeah, and that's where I've got to where I am now.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Kathryn. So I'm definitely going to be taking notes here. So I'm going to turn my camera off and listen attentively to this. We've got about 23 students in the call, so I'm really pleased actually. So I'll leave it with you. So here's Kathryn's CV Masterclass. Thank you, Kathryn.
Okay. The first thing I wanted to say, actually, everybody, is obviously thank you for coming, especially on the sunny day and half term. But everything I'm going to talk about is my personal view, really. There's no exact science to the job market, CVs, interviews, any form of recruiting. There is best practice and tried and tested methods, but when it comes down to it, it is a lot of personal viewpoint. So my advice would be ask a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, get a lot of views, and then use what works for you. Not just necessarily what someone has told you to do, but what I'm going to talk about today is a real top line overview of certain points that I think really make a difference. And in the 20 years that I've been recruiting, what I respond to and what sort of I take note of when it comes to looking at a CV and even further out into the job search. Feel free to ask any questions, by the way, as we're going along. What I think is really, really critical is that you make and take every opportunity you possibly can. I'm very conscious, and I'm conscious when I interview and look at CVs from school leavers or graduates, that you don't yet have the 20 years experience, career experience to talk about. So what you do outside of your academic qualifications is really, really important. And that you actually take any opportunity that's lucky enough to come your way, but also that you make opportunities for yourself. Not everything comes to you voluntarily. A lot of the best opportunities and the activities that really shine on a CV are things that people have actually gone out and made happen for themselves, and that says a lot about somebody as well. Extracurricular activities, sports, arts, music, travel, volunteering, all really, really critical. One of the absolute imperatives, in my view, is that actually someone has gone out and undertaken some paid work. Doesn't necessarily matter what it is. It doesn't have to be linked to your career choices. Often it's best maybe if it's not. A traditional Saturday job of in a shop or in a bar or restaurant, obviously conscious, rather challenging at the moment, but things will change. Washing cars, anything that actually is a job where you've had to get up in the morning, you've had responsibilities, you've had your own money from, really, I think is very, very important, and makes somebody stand out. At a point of being a school leaver or a graduate, coupled with work experience and internships that actually are relevant to what you think your career choices might be, or things that you want to explore. And these are things also when you might have to go and make this opportunity happen for you. Merchant Taylors is an amazing school that will give you opportunities, I'm sure. However, sometimes some of the best opportunities are ones that you've actually proactively gone out and networked with, people that you know, or people that might know people, anyone you can build a relationship with, that will help you with contacts and experience, and an opportunity to gain exposure to something that skills and experience in an industry or a type of job that you're wanting to explore. And I just mentioned social media in terms of when I was at school, when I was at university, social media didn't exist, but now it's just part of life, and it's a huge tool where you can market yourself and build your own personal brand. And it's something to watch out for, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But it's definitely, in terms of making and taking opportunities, use social media to its maximum to try and generate options for yourself. So if I then go on to talk about the overview and basics of what I believe is important in a CV, if we start out with visuals and layout, I get asked questions all the time. Well, should it be 2 pages? Should it be 1 page? How should I lay it out? This is all important, but it is basics. And what's key is that actually it's easy to read. In the industry, there's what we call the 7-second rule, which is if someone's not interested in what they're reading, after 7 seconds, they'll probably move on to something else. So make sure all your most relevant information and experience and what you want to shout about is actually in that top half page, because that's what someone's going to read first. And even if you think of the basics, these days someone could be reading on an iPhone, on an iPad. So what's actually at that real top chunk is absolutely critical. Use all the spaces, the margins, keep really to the point, bullet points. Don't use lots of words, be punchy, put things in bold, underline things that you really, again, want to shout about. That is my ideal visual to see, that's making it really easy for me to digest and really understand what someone's about and where their strengths lie. There were some regulations that came out a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if you would be aware of them, called GDPR, which is about your personal details. And on someone's CV, there are personal details, and I'd advise you to keep them to a minimum. It only needs to have your name, your email address, your mobile number. Even postal address, I don't think is necessary, because also it can be an issue because you might move house and then someone might send you some correspondence in the post and you don't get it, and then they think you've not replied. So where we are now with communication networks, email address, mobile number, name, but then also when it comes to, and this isn't personal details, but it's personal about you, about hobbies and what you like doing, etc. Do make sure that you do include your extracurricular activities, and it brings out your personality. It's really key that your CV is your personal document, and it shows who you are and your character, because someone will get bought into that and they'll like it, and then that will follow through in further interviews. And that links also in with what makes you different, what's going to make you stand out. So when you're sort of sat there with a blank piece of paper and you're thinking, what am I going to write down? Speak to people, ask friends, ask family, say, what are your views about me? What do you think I've achieved over the last couple of years? And take their viewpoints and think about what you want to tell people about you that actually makes you stand out from the crowd, and link that in with your skills and experience. And what's really key about skills and experience is that you back it up with as much evidence as possible. And that's why, and I put in caps lock here, focus on your achievements, is that someone can say a statement that they've got really strong communication skills, for example, they're really organised, but it's just a statement. There's no evidence of where actually someone has shown those skills. So if you can weave in examples of where you have demonstrated strengths in certain skills, whether it be just pick on communication and you could say, really strong communication skills, and then you put something that you've done that shows that, whether that be, led a debating society, or presented in front of X number of people, or taken a team lead role in a really difficult sporting challenge, whatever it happens to be. If you can back it up, that's proving to someone who's reading your CV that you have actually shown strengths in those skills, and that's really critical, and that will become even more critical as you start to gain experience and move throughout your career. Before I move on, are there any questions so far on any of the points that I've mentioned?
Can I ask a quick question, Kathryn?
Yeah.
What do you think about using some of the templates that are already available online?
I think as long as it's simple, then, and it can give you a guide, so they can be useful. I definitely think, unless you're looking into sort of creative opportunities where people will be looking at your CV as a creative document as well as a factual document, again, it's got to be easy to read. So if I've seen some before where they look very jazzy and they look pretty, but actually I'm jumping around the CV trying to find out information I want to find out, and it's making it hard for me to read. So someone will naturally maybe stop reading. So I think if it helps you, but it's got then yes, use them, but only if they're very, very simple would be my advice.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to flag on cover letters, I suppose they're not really called cover letters anymore. They'd be more kind of cover emails, where this is different to your CV, because your CV is more of a generic document, whereas a cover email would be more targeted for that particular opportunity, job, internship, whatever it happens to be. And the more effort you put into your cover email, the more interest that employer knows you have. So if something is very generic in a cover letter, you know someone's probably sent that out to another 100 people. Whereas if it's really bespoke and targeted to that particular organisation, it does show a lot of effort, which will definitely interest somebody who's reading it, because they will feel special. And not just one of many organisations, societies, whatever it happens to be, that you will need to approach it, in one go. And how you follow up on all of this, all of your applications, is really important. How you keep yourself organised, how proactive you are in timely following up, being attentive, again showing you're interested. Is really, really important. Even down to when I give people advice, I say go basic, just get an Excel document and write down all the opportunities you've applied for, who the contact was, what their email address is, what you've done, what you've said, and keep it quite accessible to yourself. Because if someone just phones you out the blue and says, I've got your application, I've got your CV and I'm really interested, and you've kind of forgotten who they are, the conversation could start off a bit rockier than actually if you straight away remember this application and remember the person and can bring something to life quite quickly. That will again help you stand out from the crowd. And don't be surprised if you have to follow up. I know people get frustrated if they send applications into black holes, into generic email addresses, but that's often how businesses work these days. And just embrace it and just run with it, but then try and get a contact name and try and follow up, just so you know one way or the other if they're moving forward with your application or not. And I just wanted to mention LinkedIn. I think someone else might have actually run a session on LinkedIn, but I couldn't talk about CVs and not talk about LinkedIn, because it's actually just as important, if not more, as a tool, as a marketing tool for yourself, and as a recruitment tool for anybody in the industry. I mean, it's the #1 professional networking tool, job board, headhunting source out there at the moment. Unfortunately, no competitors. So it's really key that you lift what you've done in terms of your CV and made it appropriate for your profile. If you haven't got a profile, definitely get one. People will probably, it could be the first place that somebody goes to. They might sort of get your CV, but then they also look you up on LinkedIn and see what recommendations you might have, what groups you're part of, what your interests are. So it's really key that your profile has some information in it. I personally don't believe it should be your actual CV. Some people just copy and paste their CV onto their profile. I think it's important that it contains the same thread of information, but that's it. It's probably shorter and snappier. Your CV also, you're in control of who you send that to, whereas anyone in the world can look you up on LinkedIn. So make sure that everything on there is accurate, it's up to date. You do have a sense check to keep things up to date every few months, and you're adding and removing things as you need to. But 100% use it as a tool to help you connect and help you search for opportunities, follow organisations that interest you, join groups, ask people for recommendations, connect with relevant people and be active on it. Watch what you're status updating, what you're posting. People will look at that. So it's definitely something, a corresponding tool and method of marketing as well as your CV. So I couldn't not mention it, but I'm conscious that actually there might have been another fuller session on LinkedIn, so I won't talk much more about it unless there's any other questions. So a real whistle stop tour there, and top line information, and happy to go into more detail if people have got questions, but just to sort of finalise again, to reiterate, making opportunities for yourself and taking them as much as you possibly can, even if you're tired and you want a weekend off, but there's an opportunity to go to an event or go and speak to someone or do some volunteering, whatever it happens to be. I'd thoroughly encourage you to take those opportunities. And remember, your CV is your personal marketing material. Make sure it sounds like you. I've had scenarios where I've read CVs and then someone's walked in the room for an interview and they just seem like a different person, and I thought somebody else has probably written the CV for you. You're using very different language, you're pitching yourself in a different way, so make sure it's really got your tone to it. That's really important. And network and be proactive as much as you possibly can. It's hard and it's tiring sometimes, but the more work you put into it and the more habit you get into from a younger age of putting yourself out there and having conversations, the more benefit it will be for you in the future as well. And yeah, just watch the social media channels. The first thing an employer could do is look at your Facebook photo, and if that's you, clutching a bottle of wine or something, it's you're 16, you're not just clutching a bottle of wine, but just be careful what you talk about and pictures you have online and who's tagging you, because as you start to move into the working world, people can look and be aware of that. So just watch out for the social media channels. So they were my main points to raise. Any questions from anybody?
I'm waiting to see. So if any students do have any questions, can you pop them in the conversation box and I will ask Kathryn for you. That was really comprehensive, Kathryn. I really appreciate your time this morning. I've got a question. Is there anything that you've ever seen that you were particularly impressed by?
Lots, I suppose. I think confidence is really important, and that also shows and shines out very early on. First impressions are very important and do exist. People will judge you about how you walk into a room, how you shake their hands, how you present yourself, the questions that you ask. Everyone expects nerves. Everyone expects, if you're a school leaver or you're a graduate, you're not going to have a 3-page document of all this weird and wonderful experience. So I think confidence is key. And when it comes to, I jumped ahead a little bit to when I'm starting to meet people, but in terms of CVs, when someone has really shown that they've done something very proactive and they've worked hard and they have gone out and got a summer job, a Saturday job, an evening, whatever it happens to be, that they've, as well as getting experience in something that they are genuinely interested in, they've shown commerciality to go out there and gain some independence, because you know that probably that person will have an easier embedding into a job, and into a business where there will be training and there will be a huge amount of support, but you're there to perform tasks and activities. So it shows somebody's been a self-starter and they've already got out the blocks a little bit in terms of paid employment, regardless of what it happens to be.
And I also wondered, we hear a lot about how fierce competition is in the graduate labour market. we see it a bit at university, but not nearly as much as students will find when they finish university. I just wonder what your experience of that is. Is it as fierce as we're led to believe?
I think so, and being honest, I think the next couple of years in the economy and the environment are going to be interesting. I've been to webinars where the organisations are having to make tough decisions about who they hire and who they don't hire, and I know some large organisations have chosen to freeze their graduate recruitment programmes. I don't think it will last long, and it might only be one year's cohort. We're not, as an organisation. We run a fellowship scheme, and we are running that, hiring 8 graduates this September. But it's a funny time, which is not going to help. But yeah, absolutely, competition is fierce, and it's fierce at whatever level you are at. Which is why it's so important that you stand out. You stand out from the crowd, and you make your own opportunities. I say to people often, it's and with graduates there would be lots of graduate schemes, etc., that you can apply to, but there are also proactive opportunities. If some of the best jobs out there are jobs that aren't advertised, they're jobs that you start speaking to someone and they think, oh, actually, that experience could be interesting. We have, I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning, we have an industrial placement student with us at the moment, rotating around the HR team, who was doing a business degree, and he needed to do a year out, and he emailed some of our senior management team, and they were so impressed with his email that we hired him. It wasn't an opportunity that we were going to hire, but we were really impressed with his approach. And hopefully he's had a great experience, and he's been a brilliant addition to the team. So proactivity is key, as well as adverts and schemes that you might be made aware of.
Interesting you mentioned that. I've noticed that with apprenticeships as well. After A levels, just sort of emailing on specs tends to be quite a good way of trying to find opportunities. Yeah.
That's when the competition's reduced a little bit, because it might only be you, and if they like you, and they might think, well, I'm not going to then start advertising an opportunity, because actually we'll just progress, and then there we go. So I've done it myself, and achieved success in that way as well. So I think proactivity is key, and it also shows an employer that you have done that proactively, which shows something impressive as well.
I've had a question in the comments, so asking, is quantity more important than quality when talking about achievements? So, for example, many small achievements compared to one great achievement.
I don't actually know there's an answer to that question. Good question. I think it's a balance and a judgment of the degree of success of achievements. Because an achievement for one person might be different to an achievement to somebody else. A good way to test this is to write down your thoughts and then ask people, ask peers, ask teachers, ask family, ask anyone that might be working in an industry that you're interested in, and see their views. Because what might be a real key achievement for you, someone else might say, oh, actually, I think you did this last year, and I think that's really impressive. So a balanced view on what somebody thinks is good and impressive is really important to get. So it's a bit of research, really. I think is always a good piece of work to do, to sense check yourself. So of course I haven't really answered that question, but I think there's a bit of a balance. But when it comes down to it, it's a judgment call, because it would depend what that one great big achievement, what was.
I think it's the reflection of skills as well, isn't it? Because if you're sort of listing lots of small achievements, it does look like a big long list, and there's not much reflection there, is there? I think a lot of our students as well sometimes lack confidence and underplay some really good things that they've done, or don't realise that it is really good, and not many people will have that. They do tend to lack confidence in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. When I've given CV advice to people before, and they've sort of really sort of put under the carpet something that I've sort of flagged. I've gone, oh, hang on a minute, actually this is really impressive, and they just haven't noticed, because it might be something that they can do so easily, or it wasn't much of a struggle for them, or whatever it happened to be. But that's why the kind of sense checking with peers and family and teachers is a good exercise to do.
I think that's really good advice. I haven't had any more questions come through. Oh, here we go. Do the achievements have to be directly linked to what you are applying for, or is it more about the individual skills that you develop?
I'd say both. I'd say the more relevant skills you have for a course or a role is going to put you to the top of a list. But by no means do not include other skills that you have, because I think any university or organisation likes people that are well-rounded. If you think about how the American system works, and how they don't actually choose one subject from year one, but it's still the same. You know, they go in and have a number of subjects that they study, and then they major in their final year. So to have variety and show balance and fluidity in your experiences and skills is a really good thing. But to be targeted in relevant experience, especially for some subjects and fields that are you know, the sciences, veterinary science or medicine or architecture, or anything that is very disciplined and probably more academic, I'd say that's more critical than a broad subject.
Thank you. Okay, so I can't see anybody else typing, so I think what I'll say is that the students can leave now unless they've got anything to ask, and Kathryn and I will hang around for the next 5 or so minutes in case anybody wants to ask something in a smaller forum. Does that sound okay, Kathryn?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Yeah, it was really comprehensive, really interesting presentation. Thank you very much.